Well, a new theory has popped up in the world of professional college football that is governed by opinions by a committee that gets smoke breaks and has bagels at an airport Hilton. And I think people might buy into it. It's probably hard to see this new theory, this idea that's being floated, this disaster scenario. That's what it's being called for the SEC. You can't see it now, and you won't be able to see it until probably 9 p.m., 10 p.m. on Saturday night. But here it is. Yahoo Sports is calling it the nightmare scenario for the SEC. The nightmare scenario for the SEC is only 2 teams get into the tournament. They explain how only 2 teams get into the tournament. They explain, obviously, how that would be a nightmare for the SEC, which the SEC and the Big Ten created this whole monster themselves. This was made for them. And then to only get 2 teams would be a huge embarrassment. So just 2. Now, the committee, understand this committee that gets together, that ranks the teams, that picks the teams, and the rankings matter because, obviously 12 teams get into the tournament. It's not really built, even though they try to pretend otherwise. It's not built on fairness. It's not built on righteousness. It's not, I don't even know that it's necessarily built on common sense. But they don't even think, well, they might think, and you might like to argue you have the 12 best teams, but the committee is set up to keep, in my opinion, to keep this bizarre historical obsession. It really does. It seems as if college football can't operate without polls. And I don't know why you think it's cool. I don't understand that. But it's just never seems like it's going to get away from these polls. It seems like it's an impossible exercise to expect the sport to ever move away from polls and just say you get into a tournament, you get into the playoffs by playing your way into the tournament. It's really pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. There are plenty of models out there. The NFL does it. Lower divisions of college football do it. It's not really difficult, but college football seems obsessed and married to polls. So that's not going to change, and I guess you, the public, accept that's just the way it is, and I think, sadly, you kind of like it. But here's the problem for the SEC, the way Yahoo Sports sees this, and I think a lot of people, I think you can get on board with this. I don't think it's going to happen. But I can see how people could find their way to going, oh, man, that is a problem. Yep, that could very easily happen. All right, so here you go. The so-called nightmare scenario is 2 teams. And according to Yahoo Sports, this is how it plays out. It says the headline is SEC nightmare scenario. Only 2 teams making the college football playoff. If you want to know the nightmare scenario for the SEC in 2024, the 12-team field is this. It's just 2 teams. Yes, 2. Here's how it plays out. Number 20, Texas A&M at 8-3 beats Texas on Saturday at Kyle Field in beautiful Caldwell, Texas, under the Caldwell flag. That line on that game started early in the week was at 7. I think it's moved down to 5.5 or maybe even at 5 now, which makes a little bit more sense. I mean, that's a crazy big number. So the whole thing depends on A&M beating Texas. Okay, that makes Texas 10-2. And as Yahoo points out, I've said this many times, I don't think people care. I really don't. But if you really care about strength of schedule, then that presents a problem for Texas, and that's exactly what Yahoo is arguing. So Texas would go to 10-2. They would not be in the SEC championship game. The game when Kyle Field is going to be a semifinal game, right? So Texas goes to 10-2. They would not have a single win, not one, against a ranked opponent. I'm trying to think of anyone else who would make the tournament that would have that kind of standing. And I don't know if it may be Penn State, but I'm not sure. So that would be the argument presented to this committee, that if they say over and over again the strength of schedule is really important, could you really put a team into it that, 1, doesn't make its own conference championship game, and number 2, has 2 losses, number 3, hasn't beaten a single ranked team? What else is starting to happen? And you're getting more of this because it is a opinion-based sport. The Big 12 is making noise saying, they're going public now with spreadsheets and stuff, making an argument of how much better those teams in the Big 12 are than Boise State. The fear the Big 12 has is that Boise State's going to take its spot, and it is. It is. The Big 12 is in real trouble in this tournament. The SEC has now more than once made statements saying, we think teams that make the championship game should be rewarded. We don't think a team should be punished for losing in the championship game. Now, there's no mandate that this goofball committee has to follow, but the SEC is even pushing a narrative that conceivably could work against Texas. And that is, hey, look, if A&M makes this semifinal, makes this championship game, or Georgia's already in it, you can't punish them for losing in that game. It has to stand for something. So they're pushing publicly for that committee to take that into consideration, which would work against Texas. I don't think any of this happens, but you can see the argument and the dots being connected that would leave them out. All right, so it goes, A&M would have to beat Texas. Do I think that's possible? Yes, it's possible. Do I think it's probable? I do not. Not yet. The committee then drops the Longhorns from third in the rankings, Yahoo reports, all the way out of the bracket. Someone would have hell to pay. Okay? I don't know what kind of lawsuit there would be, but there would be one. They would not tolerate that. And if they don't want it to happen, it doesn't happen. A&M advances to the SEC title game, but loses to Georgia to finish the season at 9-4. The Aggies would be out. That leaves Georgia. One thing that's not mentioned here is Georgia might lose to Georgia Tech. Now that could work against the league. Could that help or hurt Texas if they were to lose to A&M? The reason why I bring that up is that would be a Georgia team coming off a loss and with 3 losses themselves. That would be your league champion. Georgia with the automatic bid and seeded second overall. Tennessee, 10-2, if it can beat Vanderbilt, is safely in the field and likely hosting a first-round game. That's it. That's their scenario. Okay. Is that logical? Is that practical? Sure. I mean, I think their arguments are pretty good arguments. There's argument against Texas, and that is, hey, they would not have beaten a ranked team. That seems lame. Then again, they've won 10 games. That's not lame. Then again, their name is Texas. Then again, brands matter. Networks matter. So do I think this could happen? No, I don't. I find it like everything else. They're just interesting arguments. Here's the reason. I don't care if A&M beat Texas by 3 touchdowns. I don't care if Texas completely fell on their face and lost at Kyle Field under the Caldwell flag. A 2-loss Texas team will be in that tournament. Or a black Suburban. Well, I don't know what airport Hilton this committee meets in, but they're going to meet the black Suburbans. They're coming. I think the more likely argument that I think ends up happening next week, or the week after, when all this stuff is settled by this goofball committee, and that is the nightmare for the SEC, truthfully, is only getting 3 teams in. That I do think is possible, and that I do think is a nightmare scenario. I can still see a way, since I don't think this sport is anything other than big brands and big opinions. I still think I can see a way that 4 teams get in. But yeah, the 2-team would be an embarrassment for the SEC. A total embarrassment. You can argue with me and say that's logical, Jeff, it could happen. I don't think so. 3 teams, I think, is still an embarrassment. And yes, that could very much happen. And that's not the way this thing was set up. It wasn't supposed to go that way. That one, I think, is a nightmare. And in this case, a realistic nightmare.